Okay, but this is a message from a customer called Cheryl. And Cheryl, I don't know where she's from. Oh, she's writing about dollars. She's American. And Cheryl says, I just wanted to share a huge win for Storyteller Tactics. I used these tactics for a new business pitch, which has turned into a $2.5 million contract for the first year of my company. It blew my boss's mind. Pip decks really do work. I have now purchased every single deck and can't wait to see what happens. Hey, so I was chuffed to bits when I read that. So what I'm going to do, I've asked the customer services team to make contact with Cheryl and to invite her, if she would be willing to share her experience with us, so that I'll record a chat with her and find out what she did, and how she approached that, because I think that'd be really useful. It's always great to see examples of how other people use the tactics, um, because they're quite a flexible tool, and that has massive advantages in one sense, that you can use them for all kinds of storytelling, social media, writing, script writing, pitch writing, email writing. Yeah, you can use them for all kinds of, but that also has a downside, which is it can be a bit confusing as to where to start. No. Okay. So listen, what I'm going to ask you to do is to use the chat function on Storyteller Tactics to put some questions in, because this is Ask the Author. You can ask me anything you like. So start to use the chat function. Some of the questions will be things we've been asked before, so I'll have some sort of pretty quick answers. So, there are, and some of the answers I'll also be dropping links from, for example, the Pipdex blog. So there'll be a an article on the blog which I think helps you answer your question. So I'll just drop the answer in straight away. Okay, so anybody want to go first? Either raise a hand and come on the mic, or put a question into the chat. But anybody want to go first? Don't be shy. Travis, go on. Seeing as you're being such a good co-host, well, off you go. What's your question, Travis?
So I'm about to do a storytelling, really pitch development workshop with students. And
Mm,
while I've taken in the storytellers, the storyteller tactic deck myself, I'm a little bit at a loss as to how to quickly engage a group of 20 or 30 students into using the deck themselves in starting to create their pitches. So I was hoping to get some
yeah,
advice from you on how to
brilliant. Okay,
scale it up.
tell me a little bit more about the students. What are they studying?
So I lead an entrepreneurship
Oh,
program
brilliant.
here. It's a co-curricular one at Colgate University,
Yep.
and I recently bought all the pitch decks on the special holiday end sale, or the PIP decks.
Mm,
And I'm especially excited about the storyteller one.
mm,
We're asking the students to develop 3-minute pitches for their ventures, and they vary widely from kind of typical tech forward, scalable ventures to small and campus businesses to even some nonprofits.
mm,
So that's really the task. We're also asking students to be ready to do a no slide, 60
mm.
second pitch, but the
Yep.
3-minute one is with slides and is the primary deliverable.
Good. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Um, what age are the students, by the way?
They're all undergraduates.
Okay. Okay. Great. Okay. Okay. So, um, the immediate answer in terms of what's the best structure for them to use, I think it's the card. Not surprisingly, I'm going to pick out is the one's called Pitch Perfect. Yep. So it's one of the green cards because it has a very specific function. So we gave them a different color. So Pitch Perfect is how to structure a pitch. So I'll walk you through this in a second as to how that tactic works. It's a format, it's a formula. Um, it's a very distinctive framework, and um, and the great thing about that is it's quite easy to teach. The only drawback with it is by the time you're on your fifth or sixth or 10th pitch, you're going, right, okay, I know where this is going now. So in other words, it becomes a little bit formulaic. But having said that, look, it's good when you're trying to do something, it's good to start with a reliable structure. Then once you're comfortable with it, you can play around with it with the structure a bit. Okay, so that's the first thing. In a moment, I'll show you what, okay, pitch perfect. But there's a way of thinking, okay, how do I get people into the idea of using a template in the first place? And there's a story card that is a very kind of useful way as a teacher, or you've got to stand up in front of people and you've got to get their attention in a very short time flat, or you're fighting the rest of the session to keep their attention. And so I think for that, not just for this session you're talking about now, but generally, I think there's a story tactic called story hooks. And story hooks is one of the pink cards because it's about, so story, the reason why this is pink is because it's about style. And this is basically saying, look, once you've got your story, sometimes you need some little polish to it. This won't help you find your story, but it will help you when you know your story to say, right, here's how I'm going to hook you into it. So in this case, in Travis's case, he knows what his story is. He's got to get a bunch of students to adopt a way of working. It's going to help them. Okay, so that's the kind of story. So the hook here, well, on the back, it suggests a number of different ways you can create a hook for what you're trying to explain. So the best one the best hook I won't go through them all because you can read the card yourself, but I'll go through the first two. The best hook in many cases is to ask a question. So if you ask a question of your students, why do you think most pitches fail? Okay, they will not have no opinion on that. They won't know the answer, yeah, but they won't have no opinion. They won't sit there thinking, I don't care, because what's happening is you're kind of opening up a gap in their knowledge of the world by asking a question. And then they have to listen to you to get the answer. You could even make it, because if you look, I know what it's like in a lecture theatre. You ask a question, it's like tumbleweed blows across the room, yeah, and nobody answers it. So there's a little trick you can do, a little public speaking trick you can do with here, which is to say, look, I'm going to ask you a question. Why do you think most pitches fail? Turn to the person next to you, right? And just see if you can come up with 3 reasons why you think most pitches fail. And then everyone goes, oh shit, he means we have to do some work. And then they sort of turn to each other and they go, oh, I don't know. Then they start talking. You let them talk for about 60 to 90 seconds. Yeah. Then you call them back. You say, right, hands up. Who thinks they've got the answer? And then the hands will go up. So it avoids that tumbleweed moment. So it's a nice little trick, a public speaking trick there. Okay, so questions are a great hook because you've got our attention now. Taking the unexpected approach is a good hook. So normally you'd say, here's how to do a successful pitch. No, start with, here's why your pitch will fail. You're giving the same information, but you're just doing it in an unexpected way. You can also think about, look, what you're giving people here is knowledge and secrets, the last 2 things on the card. You're giving them a shortcut to knowledge. Look, this framework is a shortcut to expert knowledge. This has come out of me having a lot of conversations with salespeople and entrepreneurs and investors. So I'm giving you a shortcut. You could say, look, this is the secret. A secret's a great hook because a secret basically, as what you're doing when you're offering somebody a secret, is you're saying, here's some information plus power, information that you don't know, and I know it and you don't, and now I'm going to give you that, and that's quite powerful. It's very hard in any situation for any of us if somebody come up to you and said, I know a secret, right? It's really hard for us to go, I don't care. Yeah. So if you look on the front cover of most magazines, um, yeah, popular magazines, what are the key words they use to get you to buy the magazine? Exclusive, hidden, secret, inside, undercover, uncovered. revealed. Yeah. All of those are the same thing. Here's a secret. Do you want to see it? So all of those hooks, right? That's a way of thinking about opening any lecture, any talk is with a hook. Okay. But then you get into this pitch perfect because this is the technique we're going to use. This is the shortcut to knowledge. And excuse me. And actually, usefully, there are two. There's a 60-second version of the pitch, and there's a 3-minute version as well, both on the same card. And the 60-second version is right. What's the problem you're solving for me? You're the person pitching. I'm the person listening. You are trying to solve my problem, or someone like me. And if you're not, you're just talking to yourself. So, what's the problem you're trying to solve for me? Not why do you think you're on such a clever idea? I don't care what you think. I don't care what you know. What I care about is what problem are you solving for me? So, okay, how do you solve it? Second question. And why should I trust you? Okay, so there's some like problem, solution, trust. So you should be able to get those things across in 60 seconds without any images. Okay, that's first version. The second version is it kind of follows like a story arc, a rising and roller coaster story arc. And this is a model based on something that Nancy Duarte points out. She does a very good TED talk on comparing, I think, Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech with Steve Jobs launching the iPhone, first iPhone. And she said what both of them do is contrast a negative state to a positive state. But then they come back down into the negative, and then positive again, and then negative, and then positive, and then negative and positive. And so the negative state is often the present. Yeah. Things aren't right now, but so Martin Luther King said, in Alabama, this is happening now. I have a dream in the future. Steve Jobs was saying, your BlackBerry does this. The new iPhone will do this. Okay, so similar sort of thing, contrasting negative and positive. But here's the interesting thing. You would think that a pitch is all about being positive, but you can overdo the positivity by making something sound too good to be true. So that's why the roller coaster has an up and a down and an up and a down again, because the first stage of this roller coaster to the pitch is the problem, and the problem clearly is negative. Yeah, it's a negative state. It's not right. People aren't happy. People are frustrated. Yeah, okay, so it's negative. Then you immediately lift people up and say, there's an opportunity to do something about it because I've had an idea, or because technology has changed, or because there's a pot of money here, or because whatever it is, it's an opportunity. And the opportunity is positive, it's exciting. You cannot, shouldn't then go, and therefore everything's going to be fine. So you don't go problem, opportunity, solution. Everything's going to be fine because we don't believe it. So what you do is you bring people down again. And so you go, okay, here's problem. There's an opportunity. This is not going to be easy. But if we get it right, the promise is immense. And there's a reason, I think, why you bring people back down again. There's two reasons. One is because it reassures our inner kind of skeptic. So we have this inner skeptic inside us all, the one who's been there, seen it, and done that. And the inner skeptic is going, yeah, that just sounds too easy. I don't buy that. Okay. And the other reason why it's important to do is you just need to have this kind of, you need to have uh, a realism about what you're suggesting. If it was easy, right, we'd have done it already. So there aren't any easy answers out there. Yeah. All the easy answers. Hey, everybody. So I'm back on mute. Thank you. Okay. So all the easy answers have already been taken. Therefore, there's only hard answers left. Yeah. So anything that's not doing the roller coaster, yeah, anything that isn't going back down again and saying this is going to be hard is a get rich quick scheme. And when you hear get rich quick, you go, yeah, I'm out. Don't believe it. So the pitch perfect roller coaster feels more realistic. And I think it's true. It's a truer story in a sense than the optimistic version, which is if you agree with me, back me, everything will be fine. Well, it won't, especially if you're only a student and you're only on your first, this is your first venture into entrepreneurship. It's highly unlikely that you'll be perfect first time. Highly unlikely. Yeah. You're going to try something and it's going to be really hard. It's not going to be easy. Okay, so that's the card I'd use with the students. I'd hook them into it in the first place with a story hook. Then I'd give them that. The only downside of that is you will get a little bit of a cookie cutter. I can't even say. You'll get a little bit of a cookie cutter response, as in you'll get 25 quite similar pitches. Okay, but
Got you. Uh, really appreciate this. It's actually perfect because we're starting the actual pitch delivery will be about 2 months later. So I was looking for an icebreaker, get started, and then we can sick the students on more differentiated stuff that's more customized to their work. So thank you so much for that. Hey, let me hit you with the next question.
mm,
We've got someone who is being tasked with a narrative email campaign
okay.
and has used Storyteller for her presentations,
Mm,
but she's wondering how you could use the Storyteller deck to lay out a strong storytelling narrative for an email campaign.
okay.
And before you dig into that, we had someone with a similar question who's thinking about the same thing in the context
Mm.
of social media.
Okay. Okay. Well, listen, the first thing would be with all of these, with email campaigns and social media, I'd go back to story hooks. Okay. Story hooks are a very useful way of thinking about, look, with social media, you've got about 3 seconds before we scroll past. With email, you've got about 3 seconds while we decide whether to open your email or not. So the story hooks give you all kinds of different ways on 7 different ways, 6 different ways on the back of framing the story, framing the opening 3 seconds. Yeah. So if you're going to give somebody something unexpected, well, you actually kind of need to know your audience. You need to know what they expect you to say. Where are we? Who's asked the question? So Starion and Dr. Caven, be interested to know what it is you're talking about with these email campaigns and the social media campaigns, because they'll in any topic. So Dr. Caven first. What's the subject you're talking about?
Hello, this was somebody else's question, but thank you.
Mm,
Um, my plan is this year to write about to simplify profitability for business. So it's all around
profitability.
business growth and challenges to that.
Okay, growth. Okay, smashing it. And Darian, what's the area that you're writing about?
Yeah, so my context specifically is geared towards the campaign is geared towards educators, so
Okay.
everyone from teachers and coaches all the way to district level leaders and IT folks. And it's really to be sharing stories of impact,
Mm,
successes people have had in our program,
yep.
and also get them connected with other people who have maybe similar challenges, similar stories, and
Yep.
get them connected peer to peer.
Okay, brilliant. Okay. Well, listen, in both cases, both with talking about, how education has an impact or talking about how you can help people grow their business. So, the kind of messages that people in your field, your competitors, yes, the kind of things people are saying all the time. So in the business growth world, it's all this like 10 times, 10x your revenue and 100x your revenue, and with the educators, it's really about that positive, what impact education has on lives. Okay, these are all good stories, but if you want to think, okay, they're hearing that all the time. Can I give them something they're not expecting? Because that'll really, yeah, that'll jump out. So is there, so failure stories are actually really interesting. Because A, they're unexpected, and B, we actually like learning from failures. Because what we do when we read someone else's failure story is we're thinking, well, I'm not going to be that stupid. I won't make that mistake. Now, the reality is we'll go off and make a different mistake instead. But in both cases, that's quite a nice hook. Everyone's talking about successes. Okay, well, let's have an honest conversation about some failures, especially, obviously, what a great failure story is someone who failed and bounced back, right? So someone who failed at the aspect you're going to help people, but they bounced back. They learned. Although that's a brilliant failure story. Okay, to the question that Starion asked initially was about a marketing campaign. Well, I can share a link with you all if I can find it. We did when we launched Storyteller Tactics. We wrote an email campaign for the Kickstarter, and we basically we made it to a series of little stories about customers who had challenges that stories helped them with. And I'll send you. Let me just. I'll send you a link. This is quite a useful link for everyone, by the way. This is the. There's a blog post on our blog called "How to Get Started with Storyteller Tactics." I don't know if you may have seen it already, but it's my kind of dumping ground for all the useful stuff I ever write that helps people get started with the tactics. And if you kind of go down the page a little bit, there are some case studies, but there's also a section called Read a Story Written with Storyteller Tactics. And these are basically 17 emails we sent out over a period of about, I don't know, I can't remember how many weeks it was. I think it was one a week for 17 weeks, building up to the Kickstarter launch. And the result of that and some other good marketing was when we went on Kickstarter, we had a $100,000 target, and we hit it in a day and a half. So we were there for 6 weeks, and we'd hit $100,000 in the first day. So it did work. And what was nice about it was people wanted to know the next, because we broke it into episodes, and we had little cliffhangers at the end of each story. And when we kind of, we called back to little stories, and people wanted to know what happened to these people who I'd made up. I'd made up a bunch of people. Now, I never pretended they were real, so that's okay. No, I did. It's always interesting. I don't know do any of you work in fields where client confidentiality is really important? I know, in education, that's a big deal. Yes, okay, because you're working with children, so confidentiality is really important. And I think as a result of that, education is one of the worst offenders when it comes to terrible writing. Yes, you're nodding. You've had to read loads of this stuff. You've probably written some of it, right? It's people use jargon all the time. Teachers are terrible, aren't they? They use jargon all the time. Here's what happens. Teachers in the staff room tell stories, yes, about emotionally difficult moments in the classroom. They tell stories. Then you get them to sit down at a keyboard and start writing, and they stop telling stories, and they start using jargon and theory and concept and $10 words. Yes, and it becomes unreadable because it's so boring. So the part of the reason why they do that is they're kind of protecting, I suppose. They're protecting the identity of the people, that children they're talking about, and that's important. I get it, but you can tell a story without using a real person, as long as you're clear with people what this is what you're doing. So you can say, when you're telling a story about something, if you're trying to explain your work, so Starion talking about education, Dr. Cavan talking about growth, and you say, okay, here's something I need to tell you about, it's really important. For example, and you give a little story about a person. And the best card, by the way, for those, for example, stories, the best tactic for those is movie time. Yeah, the movie time tactic lets you tell a little for example story. When you say for example, I expect you to tell me something that actually happened. Okay. I don't expect you to lie. I expect you to tell me something that actually happened. But you can also say, just imagine. And then it's clear that you're not telling me a factual story, but you're telling me a plausible story. That's important. Yeah. So you could say, for example, Starion, you're talking about um, the impact of, okay, what difference can a great teacher make to a kid who's completely going off the rails and his behavior is just, yeah, just so challenging. He's about to get kicked out of school and he's only 8 years old. Okay. So you can say, just imagine you're the mother of an 8-year-old little boy and every day in school he's getting into fights. Okay. Now, it's really hard for us as human beings to refuse to imagine. Yes. Someone says to you, just imagine, and paints you a little picture. You'd have to have a heart of stone to sit there saying, I refuse to imagine. That's not what we do. Right. So you can say, just imagine, straight into movie time. You're the mother of a little boy. He's 8 years old. Every single day in school, he seems to get into a fight. He's got a real problem controlling his temper. And you're at your wit's end. Okay, there's the action and emotion that you need for a movie. And we're all imagining being that mum. Okay, what's the best thing a teacher can do for you right now? And I don't know, but you do. And we're in the story and we want to know because, oh my God, that could be me one day. We feel a sympathy. Okay, so that I would say in terms of other good cards, okay. Um, it's a very long question. It's a very long question. A very long answer to your very short question. I suppose if you're thinking about a campaign across several emails, and you're thinking, well, I'm going to break this up into episodes. Um, okay. Well, the story structure cards might allow you to do that. Um, so we talked about the roller coaster of Pitch Perfect, but there's a kind of roller coaster on the back of the card called No Easy Way. Oops, there it is, No Easy Way. And it's a kind of rise and fall roller coaster of a difficult journey. Well, you could imagine taking that and splitting it into maybe 3 emails with a beginning and kind of early success, but a hint that all is not well. Tune in next week. Yeah. Next week, everything, all was not well. The wheels come off, things go really bad. But we're not giving up. And then the third episode is, we didn't give up. We tried something different. And this is what happened. And this is where we are now. So structures allow you to kind of make things episodic. Um, really interesting.
How do you how
Go
do you
on.
reconcile the or identify when you want to leave them on a cliffhanger versus when you want an actual tangible call to action? How do you reconcile those and still keep your momentum throughout that campaign?
It's a very good question. I think it isn't a science. So I'm not going to give you a very good answer here. That something's going to be done on your gut feeling. Um, but but what really helps is to try things and then look at the data. So look at the click-throughs, the number of opens, look at the response rate, all those kind of things. That this is what social media allows us to do. It's what email marketing allows us to do, is to look at the click rate. So I think I'd say go with your kind of your gut feeling. Should I be wrapping up every story with a call to action, every email with a call to action, or should I be leaving things on a cliff edge? Um, I think, I suppose from a marketing point of view, you're always thinking, what is my ask here? What am I asking people to do? And okay, we all know that people's reaction to email is if they get to the end of the email, you've done really well. Never mind if they then, put their details into a spreadsheet or whatever it is you want them to do. So yeah, I suppose I would say experiment and see what the data looks like is the best thing to say. So I don't know the answer to that. It's the same with the people ask sometimes, how can I tell when a story's going on too long? Or how can I tell if my story's too long or not? And the answer is you don't know until you try, but you read the room. Yeah. You look for the reaction on people's faces. If you're in the room with them or on a call like this with people, you look for you read the room and you be ready to switch and be ready to, to sort of cut the story short. You can't obviously read the room in the same way with digital communication, but you can read the data. I mean, having said that, look, there's an awful lot of very, very good advice out there on social media marketing and email marketing. There's also, I think, still a fair amount of guesswork going on. So, for example, I talked about the build up to our Kickstarter campaign, which is 3 years ago now. And we've been experimenting with adverts ever since on social media. And you may have seen, I do lots of adverts where I sit here and I sound all wise and knowledgeable, and like an expert on video. And those videos, we don't know which ones are going to work and which ones don't. And the one that worked for a long time, the best selling advert we had for Storyteller Tactics was just somebody holding the box in front of the camera and doing that. Right? And that outsold me by a factor of like 2 to 3. And I didn't know why. And it was driving me crazy. And no one really knows why. So there's a little bit of experiment involved. I wish I could tell you more. I wish I could be more precise. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Okay.
Yep. Christian Harries has a question
Oh,
regarding.
Sorry, can you just give me a second? It's my son calling. I've got to quickly. Hold on. Yeah. I will. Come on call at the moment. I'm just going to. Is it okay if I call you? Aha. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So
yeah,
Christian,
I was just
yes.
pointing you to Christian Harry's question, which is, are there certain cards you found that are good for specific situations? For example, is X card great for an executive with little time? Y card great with going in depth in a case study? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay. So what I would say is there's a card that I wrote. There's 2 cards I wrote for people with very little time. And okay, the first one, it's a yellow card because it's basically about you as a character, and it's called What's It About? And the idea was, look, the character you don't want to be is the person who can't get to the point. Yep. So someone asks you, what are you doing? What do you actually do? And you go, well, it's quite complicated actually. No, it's not. Okay. And on the back of that card, it suggests, look, stories tell us that stories work because they're about, 3 basic things. They're about change, right? They provide new information, and usually they're about some sort of personal benefit. And therefore you can use that framing of, look, get it in a nutshell, get it down to one line, get it in a tweet. What's it about? So Dr. Caven can think about this like, what's my advice about? Well, stuff's changing. Okay, AI is looming. It's gonna rip your business if you're not careful. Okay, new information. I've just done a survey of 2,000 business leaders like you. Do you want to know what their number one concern is right now? Of course I do. You've got new information. Personal benefit, well, that's the kind of obvious one in a business setting, is what I'm working on will help you. Here's how. So that's a really good framing to think, okay, whatever you are working on, yeah, whatever you're doing, you should be able to frame it in terms of change, new information, or personal benefit. And I think that's one like sort of shortcut, if you like, for busy people. The other one, now then, where did I put this one? Oh yeah, that's also in character. Also in character for the same reason that you want to be the person who's flexible with your storytelling, yes, rather than the person who is stuck on a tram track going in one direction who can't deviate. Right? So cut to the chase that's the kind of cruel thing people say to you, isn't it? Come on, cut to the chase. And you go, right, okay. So it allows, if you like, cut to the chase gives you some get out, escape routes for if you're in the middle of a story that you've prepared and you think, oh well, this is really good, and you can tell that you're losing your audience. Okay, so the advice here is, look, there's 3 possible ways out where you can just cut to, either cut to a moment of drama, which will get their interest again, or cut to the end. Yeah, cut to the point you're trying to make. And just, it's better to cut a story and get out than it is to persevere with a bored audience. Okay, so that's people with little time. Into greater depth in a case study or presentation. Okay, I mentioned before about movie time. It's a very, very solid card. So you want to go into a case study, you go, for example, and then you tell a little story, because it's the little story that people tend to remember. You're saying, okay, so we're not very good at plurals. Okay. I could say to you, I have, I've got 100,000 customers around the world. I've spent 20,000 hours telling stories. I've told 20,000 stories in my career. What does that look like? What does 20,000 stories look like? It's impossible. I'll tell you about one that really affected me. Okay. The little picture we can see. The big picture we can't see. So that's case study. Yeah, for example, movie time. Good in an interview. Right, okay, listen, we've got a blog post about how to use stories in a job interview. And I'm going to stick it on the chat right now. Hold on a second. Bang, bang. Okay, I'm going to try and get through a few more questions now. So let me see.
And Steve, for those of us who
Yes.
missed out on asking questions prior, would you please add to the list one simple question, which is, what's your favorite card?
I think it is probably, really like movie time, right? Because it's just really, really solid. I really like The Dragon in the City, because who doesn't like a dragon? And I really like, and I shouldn't, but I do, I really like Pride and Fall, because I am very attracted to the things, what's the phrase I'm looking for? The tragedy of good intentions. I find those stories just endlessly fascinating when someone sets off to try and do a good thing and it ends up going bad. And I don't know why I find that so attractive, but I do. So the story of Icarus, Icarus's father tries to escape from prison by building them some wings, and he does it. It's amazing. It's a miracle. And then the boy flies too close to the sun, and the wings melt, and he comes crashing down. And I really like that story. I really like the moment in Jurassic Park where the dinosaurs break out. I have no idea why. I think it's because I know I've got a theory, but I won't share it with you. Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay. One mistake to avoid too much going up.
There's two questions pending, Steve.
Yes, go.
Towards the end of the chat.
Yep.
The first one is the long question about brand story.
Okay. Yes.
That's from Bradley.
Bradley.
And
Hello,
then
Bradley.
there's one more
Okay, so does story hooks work the same as brand story? Brand story. Now, when you say brand story, is this a product or a book that you've come across, Bradley?
It's actually brand story towards a business, service-based business.
Okay, so there's a book called, I'm looking for it on my shelf, Build a Story Brand, which is a book and has a 7-stage framework. I can't find it. It's somewhere on my shelf, and it's called Building a Story Brand, and it has a 7-step hero's journey that you can apply to your whatever your brand is. Okay, it's quite a good book. It's only one framework, and we've got 54, but that's another point. It's quite a good book. Okay, brand story. Okay, the best card at the moment in the set that exists that helps you think about brand is a combination. Okay. Okay. So if you take a story card, if you take Hero and Guide, okay, so what Hero and Guide does is it says, you are not the hero of this story. Your customer or the person you're trying to help, your educator, your business leader, whatever it is, the person you're trying to help, they are the hero of the story. And you are the guide in the story. You're not the hero. So they're Luke, you're Yoda. They're Harry Potter, you're Dumbledore. Okay. You are not the hero of the story, you're the guide. And on the back of the card, it suggests 6 different types of guide you can think about being. You might be the explorer, helping them into new territory. You might be the sage, the bringer of wisdom. You might be the warrior, helping them to fight the good fight. You might be the rebel, helping them to break the rules. So there are 6, these are archetypes, by the way, archetypal characters. And you can be one of those types of guide for your customer, depending on what your customer needs from your brand. Now, here's a little sneaky sales pitch. And then what you do is you take a story arc like Rags to Riches. Okay. And on the back, it says, okay, this is about going from a bad place to a good place. Yes. So Cinderella starts down here. She ends up here. You are the fairy godmother and you come in somewhere here. Yep. Okay. So you take a story arc and you take hero and guide and you figure out where do you come in on your customer's journey. Okay. However, we've just about to launch a new pack of cards, new deck called Archetypes. And this is coming out in February. And this basically is, it's like hero and guide on steroids. So instead of just one card, it's a whole box of cards of archetypes that can help you develop a brand identity. So that's quite exciting. As I say, it goes on sale in about 2 weeks' time. So I'm quite excited about that. But essentially, with the cards you've got right now, you take Hero Guide and you take, if you like, almost any of the story structure cards, any of the blue cards. Yes. So you could take Happy Ever Afters and think, how is my brand giving my customer the happy ever after? How are we helping the customer to grow up? How are we helping the customer to get home? How are we helping the customer do the right thing? Yeah, but you're not the hero. The customer is the hero. Does that make sense, Bradley?
It does.
Good. Very good. Okay. So you went on to say, how can these decks help create a human story about a brand? Okay. Budding business focuses on providing support for chronic pain and injury. We're trying to help to create a story that helps others relate to the business. Yes. Rather than seeing it as a service-based organization. Okay. So clearly in this case, you're okay. So somebody dealing with chronic pain and or injury. So you think, okay, of these brand identities, which one could you be? Well, you could be the explorer, helping them try and find different treatments. You could be, if they're experiencing a negative experience of the healthcare system, maybe you're a rebel, yes, helping them to, shake up the system. Maybe you're a sage, you're there to give them the very best advice, the very best science, the very best care from, Yeah. So you get the idea. You start to look and think, well, which one sort of fits what we're trying to give them? What do they need from us? The other thing that's interesting as well is you can think, okay, this is our brand. We've decided we're going to be the explorer, right? Exploring different ways of treating pain. Okay. Well, actually, no, I'll tell you what, the majority of your customers are going to be the sage. The majority of your competitors will position themselves as the sage. We have the science, we have the technology, we have the training. We know what we're doing, and we're going to give you our knowledge. Yes, that's probably the majority of your competitors.
That's pretty accurate.
Yep. Okay. So you can say, okay, we're going to do that too. We are also full of knowledge and wisdom, and yeah, that's our thing. We're going to help you by doing that. Or you could say, everyone else is doing it this way. We need to stand out by finding a different voice.
Yeah.
Now, obviously,
Yeah.
standing out from the crowd brings risks. There's a reason why zebras all look the same, right? And that reason is you try chasing one if you can't tell which one's which. So there's a defense in everyone looking and sounding the same is safe. And if you're a pink zebra, you're going to get eaten because you stand out from the crowd. But if you're a boring peacock, you're not going to mate with any other peacocks because, yeah, you've got to stand out from the crowd when you. So it's a tricky decision. Do you want to be a brand that stands out from the competitors, or do you need to fit in? Because your customers, but the answer to that question is always, what do your customers need?
Sure. And that's a great question. And the market's flooded where it is that we're at. So naturally standing out is what it is that we want to do and what we're looking at trying to do.
Okay.
So I think standing out is going to be the best. We want to be that pink zebra. We want people to talk about us. We want people to be like, why are they doing it this way? That's the best way to create buzz and brand recognition in my mind.
Yep. Okay. So then so for example, you could say, okay, they're all sages. They're all positioning themselves as sage or caregiver. Yes, there'll be one of the two. Okay. If we were rebel, what would that look like? And would the customers like it? If we were warriors fighting the system on their behalf, what would that look like? And would the customers like it? If we were explorers finding new things for them, what would that look like? Okay, so you play around. It's a little bit like doing a personality quiz. You know, one of those like online personality quizzes, except it's not a person, it's a product. But
Yeah.
here's the thing about brand, as I'm sure you're aware. Brand works because it helps us feel a personal connection to a faceless product.
Correct.
So when you think about Jeep is just a vehicle, runs on petrol, has tires. No, it's not. It's the spirit of adventure. It's the Wild West. It's a dusty cowboy. So you have a personality connection with a product. So okay. Okay, I'm going to see if I can get through a few more because we're nearly out of time.
Steve, I think we've got maybe time for two more. There's one from Matt Ramage, if I'm pronouncing it right. Small media production companies specialize in interview-based films for businesses. Are there certain cards that would help us craft a list of questions based on the narrative that the business is trying to communicate?
Okay, here's an interesting thing. And this I think happens when we all do this, I'm sure. We come to the end of a piece of work, we're 10 years into what we're doing. Or we've been coaching like Dr. Caven, we've been coaching other people in business for many, many years. Okay. And people ask us a question, it's kind of tempting to jump to the answer and go, okay, what you need is this, right? And just basically tell them the answer. But in a way, you're robbing yourself of just saying, look, the answer is this. It's like somebody gives you, I don't know, somebody gives you a detective novel, right? And you open it at the back page and read who done it. Well, that it doesn't. That's not what we do. And if the story started with, oh, okay, here's who done it, you're not going to read the story. So I think when you're talking to people in about their business, if you like, they've been on a journey and now they're at the end, or they're a good long way down the journey, and they're just going to tell you what they know now that they're at the end. But what you need to do is get them to go relive the journey and go, okay, you know this now, but how do you know this? Well, you know it because you tried something and it failed, and then you learn from your mistake, and now you know. Okay, so there's that kind of roller coaster of how do you know what you know? Well, if it's valuable, you know it because you messed up somewhere along the line. Okay, so that's the first thing is to they're going to try and tell you the end of the story, and you need to get them to walk you through the roller coaster along the way. In particular, okay, what you really want them to tell you is, here's a great way. Here's a 3-sentence structure. It's not on any of the cards because I've only just thought of this recently. But here's a 3-sentence structure that I guarantee you will work for a story. And it goes like this. First sentence starts, I assumed. Right, I assumed. Now, if someone starts a story or a sentence that's I assumed XYZ, they don't say, and I was right. Because why would you say that? Yeah, stupid. Were you wasting my time? I assumed that the floor wouldn't cave in when I walked down the hallway to get my breakfast, and it didn't. Okay, well, you're just wasting my time. That's not a story. So the first sentence goes, I assumed, ... But then, ... Yeah. Then the floor did cave in. And so I sued my structural engineer for failure. Yeah, you get the idea. So that 3-part thing, I assumed, but then, and so. So when you're trying to get that interview right, basic level, beginning, middle, and end. The beginning is, yep, what you thought you were doing. The middle is where it all went wrong. And the end is how you rescued it, how you turned it around. And any knowledge, so the story structure, the best story structure for this particular model, beginning, middle, end model, is my other favorite card, Ted, Man in a Hole. Okay, so the story of Man in a Hole can be broken. It's in 5 beats there, but you can take it into 3 sections. There's your comfort zone where you think you know what you're doing. I assumed, right? But then the wheels fell off. It all went wrong. My assumptions turned out to be nonsense, and I had to jettison them. And so now, here's what I know. So that's a really good basic. So in terms of getting the interview questions right, Matt, okay, tell me about what your assumptions were when you started. Take me back in time. Tell me about what your assumptions were, and tell me about what went wrong, and tell me about how you fixed it, and tell me about what you learned from that process. And all of those will get you into a much more interesting story. The alternative is just give me your wisdom, and all that is like opening the detective novel at the back of the story, and it doesn't really work. Okay, I'm going to try and do one last one in 3 minutes. Okay, we've got.
Great stuff. The one last question we have in the chat is, which card helps to demonstrate? Let's see here. Which card helps to demonstrate or define the enemy and demonstrate the problem? For example, the current state of marketing is broken, or there's not enough resources for small business owners.
Okay. Well, there's two I'd suggest. Okay, the first one you're gonna love because it's a great tactic, and it is my old favorite, the Dragon in the City. Yep. So the Dragon in the City is basically, there's a city, that's your status quo, that's the thing worth defending. Maybe it's your customers, yes, who you're trying to help. That's your city. coming up the hill, there's a great big fat dragon, yeah, wanting to tear you apart. What is it? Well, maybe it's AI, maybe it's corrupt business, maybe it's protectionism, maybe it's whatever it is, political change. Doesn't matter. There's a dragon coming. There's always a dragon coming. That's life. Once you get rid of one dragon, another one comes, and it's always the dragon you don't expect creeping up behind you. Okay, that's your bad guy, is your dragon. Interestingly, the dragon also sits on a pile of gold. So the dragon is threat and opportunity. That's interesting. So defeating the bad guy is also an opportunity to, I don't know, do something good. So that's one great, reliable. And by the way, what's really interesting is I've done this tactic with lots of different teams in lots of different companies. I've never had anyone yet who's turned around to go, don't be so silly. There are no such thing as dragons. Okay. Last card that's quite good for
Did you
this.
call it out as a dragon in those examples with
Oh yeah.
clients?
Oh yeah. I want if people I've said to people, look, it's up to you. When you're using this tactic, you can either call it a dragon, right? Do the mythological version of the story card.
Yeah.
Yep. Or you can talk about threats and opportunities and the status quo. Okay.
Boring.
Yeah. And I don't do that. I just refuse. People are too boring to talk about dragons. Then it'll be a very short relationship I have with them anyway. So I always go dragon. Okay, the last card, and this will be the last one of the day. The last card is about enemies. Is called Downfall, and Downfall is a story we love. It's about bad people coming crashing down. Okay, and the example I give is Lance Armstrong. Yes, drugs cheat, hiding his behavior all along. Or Harvey Weinstein was another example we used. You know, on the surface, a good person, but underneath, terrible, comes crashing down. And everyone goes, phew, what a relief. Okay. So the downfall card, and with downfall, now clearly, this is a story you don't want people to tell about you. So there's a kind of protective element to this story is let's not make that mistake that brought those guys crashing down. Okay. Or there's a ha-ha version of the story, which is look at those idiots over there. They're coming crashing down. Okay. So there's a preventative and a kind of celebratory version of the downfall story. Cool. Okay. Well, I think we've covered everything. So it only remains for me to stop the recording. I'll stop the recording now. Stop recording.